At the ancient site of Saqqara, we find the pyramid texts, the oldest known religious texts in the world. Covering the inner walls of these small pyramids are thousands of hieroglyphs showing knowledge of celestial mechanics and cycles of time. Although we've come a long way in our understanding of hieroglyphs, it is possible that many layers of meaning in the symbols remain hidden. Until now. When we approach hieroglyphics, we do so from our own point of view, and we assume that the letters of our alphabet correspond with certain hieroglyphs. There are 4,000 Egyptian hieroglyphs, but only 26 letters. In order to crack the code, we need to open our minds to different levels of meaning.
I think it's just familiarity with the way modern languages work. No one expects that a word would work differently. Our mindset is that a letter is the carrier of a phonetic value and that a word is the carrier of a concept. To understand the Egyptian words, you have to start from the approach that the letter is the carrier of the concept and the word is an extended sentence. There are nuances of meanings to the words that you don't get if you don't understand what the individual glyphs mean. For instance, there's an Egyptian word that is translated as diving duck, but when you read the glyphs it really reads pool of water, place of diving duck.
In 1822, French scholar Jean-François Champollion and British scientist Thomas Young deciphered the hieroglyphics from the Rosetta Stone. The stone was created in 196 BC. It showed the same text in hieroglyphic, Greek, and Demotic Egyptian on the one tablet. Scholars have used Champollion's translations as the basis for deciphering hieroglyphs. Could Champollion have missed subtleties or even withheld some information?
One biographical study of Champollion said that he delayed for a very long period of time before producing his translation because, in the words of the study, he clung stubbornly to the idea that an Egyptian glyph might mean something more than just a phonetic value.
Laird Scranton is a computer software engineer who has interpreted a new aspect of hieroglyphics. His research is revolutionizing the way hieroglyphic is understood.
Basically, Egyptian hieroglyphic words work more like an acronym in English, like the phrase FYI or an acronym such as CIA or CBS, where anyone who reads English understands that you don't try to pronounce this word. This is not a word that you're going to read for its meaning in terms of the letters all put together. It's one letter at a time, stands for one word at a time, and you put the words together to get the meaning.
If we think of each hieroglyphic word as an acronym, rather than having a phonetic value, a new layer of interpretation appears. Hieroglyphs reveal in symbolic terms the way the ancient Egyptians thought the universe works.
I can show that certain key glyph shapes came out of cosmology, which describes how the universe was created. Okay, and because the shapes came out of cosmology, it makes sense that the meanings that attach to the shape are associated with cosmology also. They would have meanings related to the creation of the universe. Once you agree that the sun glyph means what it means, and that's all traditional meanings, it's hard to argue that the word month doesn't say the moon makes an orbit. Or it's hard to argue that the word year doesn't say time of the Earth's orbit around the sun.
More than 3,000 kilometers further west, in Mali, there is a living culture with a surprisingly similar worldview to that of the ancient Egyptians. The Dogon live in Mali, largely in isolation. Studies of the Dogon culture mirror the ideology of the ancient Egyptians with uncanny precision.
I realized through my Dogon studies that there were relationships between Dogon words and Egyptian words, and I noticed that Dogon drawings turned up as glyphs in those Egyptian words.
Laird Scranton's radical reinterpretation of Egyptian hieroglyphs came directly from his studies of Dogon cosmological symbols. Their priests use cosmological drawings, symbols they have used for thousands of years. While it is impossible to ask the ancient Egyptians to explain their beliefs, Dogon priests can explain their cosmology and how their symbols are written and pronounced.
The Dogon lay things out in such detail that it's like having the teacher's copy of the manual of the book you're studying, with the answers to the questions written down in the back. You can go to a Dogon priest, or you can go to the anthropological studies that were taken in relation to the Dogon priests, and they flat out tell you what their symbol means and what they're, what they're trying to talk about. The general pattern I could say is that Dogon cosmology tells us how a concept should be expressed, how the word should be pronounced, what multiple levels of meaning the word should be associated with, and what kind of a drawing it should be associated with. That predicts for us what we ought to find in Egypt. And so when I go to Egyptian studies, I look at the Egyptian Hieroglyphic Dictionary or go to a book about Egyptian cosmology, sure enough, I find the same word expressing the same meanings, written with the same drawing or the same drawn character, and I say I've got a match.
How is it possible that the Dogon culture in present-day Mali is connected to the ancient Egyptians? What is the link?
The Dogon seem to have come out of a class of priests who had very specialized knowledge and who, for one reason or another, were not happy with the way things were going in Egypt and deliberately left. I would say that sounds like it's true. I can't prove it's true, but it doesn't contradict anything I know. The fact that there's a match between the Dogon drawing and the Egyptian glyph in the context of the same word, pronounced the same way, with carrying the same meanings, is just another level of validation that I'm on the right track, that these words really do correspond to each other.
Using this new interpretation of hieroglyphic, what can we learn about the ancient Egyptian view of sacred cosmology?
I had some concerns originally as I began writing some of the books about what right did I have to be revealing secrets that have been kept for 3,000 years. But when I realized that cosmology is about science, it's about the creation of matter and things like that, and I realized how close our science is right now to being caught up with what the cosmology, the ancient cosmology, seemed to know, I realized that if anybody's going to get any benefit out of it at all, that it has to come out now. You can't wait any longer. We're only about 50 years away from discovering all the things that I found in the Dogon and Egyptian cosmology.
Is it possible the ancient Egyptian cosmology was more advanced than today's science?
I'd say there is information in the ancient cosmology that would be a benefit to the string theorists and to the modern cosmologists if they'd pay attention to it. I think the Dogon and the Egyptians explain to us how it is that a mere act of perception can cause the wave-like behavior of matter to turn into particles, which the scientists don't know. When you ask Stephen Hawking how many fundamental particles there are, he says more than 200. If you ask a Dogon priest, he says 266.
Science is on the verge of understanding things that ancient civilizations seemed to know long ago. How is this possible?